With Zendikar Rising being out for more than a month and Commander Legends right around the corner, this is the time where Zendikar Rising cards will be at their cheapest, because the set is in print and people are opening the boosters. And as soon as new sets are released, the single prices will start creeping up slowly. Now, with this being said, I've arranged a list of Zendikar's best cards to buy right now, and I like to call it a Zendikar to buy list. And I've ordered these by rarity, and inside the rarity by color. So let's get started with the commons. Now, through a pre-release and a couple drafts, or just simply buying packs to open, you should have picked up a few of these commons. Now, don't go and buy these immediately. You might find these in Draft Chapter, open them in a pack or two. Keep in mind, this is a standard legal set, so don't be impressed by the commons. And let's get right into it. First off, with Dauntless Unity, it's a flexible casting cost, very low power cube you might want to put it into, or budget commander, hyper budget commander. Next up, Nahiri's Binding. It's pretty much the same as Dauntless Unity. It's interesting because it can target planeswalkers, so if that's a problem in your hyper budget commander deck that you're building, that you want a way to answer planeswalkers, put it in that. If you don't want this because it's 3 mana and that's way too expensive for this effect, I would just ignore it. Next up is Resolute Strike. No, this is the first real gem that we'll see, the first real diamond in the rough, in my opinion. It'll be great in a Warriors deck to cheat high equipment costs like Colossus Hammer. I think if you have a Warriors deck, this is that runs white, this will be an include to it if you do an equipment with high equip cost themes in an EDH deck. Into the Royal, a flexible bounce spell that can cantrip. I can see play in standard sometimes, and budget EDH. Or if you're doing a more spell slinging deck that likes to cantrip, I would definitely put that in there. Feed the Swarm, it's removal for an enchantment or a creature. This will definitely see play in standard budget EDH or normal EDH, although the sorcery does, it does hit it a little bit. Akum Hellhound is a color shifted step links. It may be playable in Eternal formats, just like Step Links is. I would keep an eye out for this and definitely grab a couple playsets. Royal Eruption is another red card, 3 damage for 2 in red that can hit face. Being sorcery definitely means it won't see play in any format aside from standard, so you're only really going to use it for standard. Cleansing Wildfire, it's a landfall trigger, it's fixing mana, and it cantrips. You'll see standard brews with some landfall decks and an odd EDH deck here and there that cares about landfall with, a lot of colors and you don't have enough fixing. Next up, Gnarled Colony, a flexible 2 or 5 mana creature, +1/+1 counter synergy. It goes into budget EDH or some standard brews. Last common we'll cover, I'm going pretty fast here because the commons really aren't that interesting, is Cliffhaven Kitesail. It gives cheap flying, it'll be an auto include in any Voltron EDH that you want flying for. So now that we're done with commons, let's cover the uncommons. Now this is where we might see a pricey card. So you might need to trade a few uncommons or fork over a few quarters. It also goes without saying that these will be pretty much all for standard, not really any Eternal format. And let's start off with Sajiri Shelter. It's a protection spell with also being a land. Now, I think this can fit into normal EDH. Spell lands, or the modal double face cards, as Wizards likes to call them, are super good and super flexible. Don't sleep on the spell lands, in my opinion. Next up is Lull Mage's Domination. It's a steal effect. That's pretty interesting. And if you're running a mill-themed EDH deck, I feel like this is a nice, flavorful include. Plus, I feel like it's kind of balanced with the X part, so it's not feels bad for your opponents. It's a feels good for you. Next up, Roost of Drakes. It's a kicker payoff. It'd be a fun include to build around in a low-power cube, or if you're doing a blue kicker EDH deck. Rune Crab, it's a mill card, so it's going to slot in right into mill EDH decks. Remember, it's a direct upgrade to Hedron Crab if you're not trying to mill yourself. Keep that in mind. And it does see standard play in Tier 1 Rogues. Slendy Vision, it's a card draw spell. It'll be great in budget EDH since it's a spell land, although it's just not powerful enough to really have an impact at the higher, the 6 and 7s on the EDH power scale. Moving on to black, we have Blood Chief's Thirst. It's a removal spell. It sees standard play, but I'm unsure about EDH play. That the first kicker of just being able to hit CMC 2 or less pretty much means you only be able to hit mana dorks, and the only decks that run small mana creatures will be aggressive decks, which it would be good against, but having to pay 4 mana just to remove one creature is way too costly for EDH. So if you have a problem with mana dorks or small creatures, I would definitely put this in a black deck that you have for EDH. Next up is Kazul's Cliff. It's the Fling land. It'll see normal EDH play if you have big creatures. It's that good. Just trust me, it's that good. Next up, Spikefield Hazard, the other red land. It's the Ping land. It deals 1 damage to something, and if it dies, you exile it. It sees standard play, maybe Pioneer. I am not sure about Pioneer, but I feel like in a deck or two, it could definitely see maybe a sideboard copy. Who knows? Keep an eye out for Spikefield Hazard. Now, moving on to green, I like to start off with all the green uncommon spell lands but Vastwood Fortification. Vastwood Fortification is the 1 green, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Now, these are all really good. All of them slot into normal EDH deck. Do not sleep on these. These are fantastic. Bala Ged Recovery is amazing. It's better than Eternal Witness, and it's better than Regrowth. I forget what that card's called, but it's just better since it can be a land. You can play it on turn 1 if you're, don't have enough lands in hand. It's fantastic. The fight spell, while overpriced, it's also a land. It's great. It's great. I love them. Next up, Roiling Regrowth, just in the standard landfall. It's not really going to see play anywhere else. 3 mana is just a little bit too expensive. Following Roiling Regrowth, Vastwood Surge. Now, it's a strictly better explosive vegetation, so that's already good for it. It'll see play in budget EDH decks, or EDH with expensive commanders that are 6 or 7 costs, or it could see play in just normal token green decks. Since it has an 8 mana, put +2/+2 on everything while getting you 2 lands, it's really flexible and I kind of like it. Soaring Thought Thief, tier 1 standard. Brushfire Elemental will experiment with a landfall in standard. Clerics of Life, Blood, standard plus black-white clerics in EDH. It sees some standard play, fringe, and if you have a black-white clerics deck, it'll definitely slot in very nicely. So after the uncommons and the commons, we'll move on to the rares. Now, most rares can be built around in standard, that goes without saying, but some are better than others. Let's start off with Felidar Retreat. It's going to see standard play. It's really good. Also, green-white EDH decks that are more tokeny, consider running this. Or if you're a green-white landfall deck that likes to ramp a bunch, definitely consider this as well. Moving on, Maul of the Skyclaves. Slots right into Voltron-style decks that run white. Also, it can be in cube if you run an equipment package in your cube. The auto-equip is really amazing. It spots you the first one for free, so your aggressive decks in your cube can just apply the pressure. It gives evasion with flying and first strike with +2/+2. It can really pull its weight in a decently powered cube, I think. Next up is Skyclave Apparition. Now, Skyclave Apparition is an amazing card for literally every format. It's an eternal format all-star. It's seeing play in Legacy and Vintage, in sideboards for now, but trust me, it will get to the main board, and it will become a staple. Now, it's not good for EDH, which is good on your wallet for now, but once standard rotates and people stop opening up Zendikar Rising packs, it will skyrocket because Pioneer, Modern, Legacy, Vintage, they're all going to want play sets and more to fit into their white decks. And just as a little added bonus, if you run a cube, this is an excellent include at any power level, really. I mean, if you're running a super duper low power level, don't include it because it's just a little bit too powerful. But it goes into any power level of cube. It's Skyclave Apparition is going to be the card that sees play out of all the cards. And it won't jump up in price by a lot since it won't see play in EDH. And EDH is the main driver of singles. currently due to, situations. So that'll be good for picking up a copy a couple years from now, but it will be expensive. It will be pricey. Pick them up now if you want to play them. Confounding Conundrum is the blue rare roll cover. It's a hate card for multiple lands entering the battlefield. I would say pick up a playset now. They could increase by a lot since the effect is so niche and people might want them. Although it won't see wide commander play, so picking it up now might be dubious. Next up, Maddening Cacophony. Mills half of everyone's deck. Well, mills half of your opponent's decks for 6. It will see jank commander play. The price will steadily increase over time. Trust me. Next up, Thieving Skydiver. It's an EDH card. It can steal Soul Ring on turn 3. It can steal equipments like Sunforger. Oh my god. And they don't get returned either. This is truly an amazing card, in my opinion. I would say definitely pick up 1 or 2 right now if you think about playing them in EDH or Commander. Well, they're the same format, EDH and Commander. This is fantastic. It can steal the mana ramp artifacts. It can steal like Bolas' Citadel if you have enough mana. It's an amazing card, and in my opinion, slot it into your cube. It'll be very cool, very nice. If you run an equipment theme or sub theme, it can be kind of seen as a hate card. And if you run aggressive blue decks, tempo blue decks, being a 2/1 flyer for 2 isn't that bad. The fail case is actually kind of decent, in my opinion. Moving on is Soul Shatter. Now, Soul Shatter is my pick for the most underrated card in the set right now. Now, Soul Shatter gets rid of commanders or very expensive creatures slash planeswalkers. It's an instant. Affects everyone but you. It gets around hexproof and indestructible. It's only 3 mana, so it's easy to hold up on your opponent's turns. And with the new commander set, there'll be a rise in commander planeswalkers. This can answer those and effectively, while also fitting into aristocrats very well. Do not sleep on this card. It is cheap now. Buy a playset or 2. Trust me. Experiment with it. I know I am. Moving on from black rares, we go to red rares with Magmatic Channeler. Very reminiscent of Tarmogoyf, albeit less powerful. Keep an eye out for standard or pioneer play. It's an interesting card draw option for red and EDH. But I would definitely run Rummaging Goblin over it. Just at face value. Next up is the green rare Scoot Swarm or Shroot Swarm. Who knows? I don't know how to pronounce that. Token generator for EDH decks that get out of hand very quickly. Highly played in standard. I think it will see some pioneer fringe modern play. Like a tier 4 deck or something. And it works well with Mutate. So if you run a Mutate deck, I would definitely think about, swapping a card for the Swarm. Moving on to another green rare is Lotus Cobra. It ramps in standard and commander. It'll be its cheapest, what am I saying? It'll be cheap now, so don't wait for rotation, because commander players are just going to gobble this up. Moving on from the monocolored rares to the multicolored rares. Let's start the party type multicolored legends. Now, if you want to build around these, pick up a copy. However, in my opinion, now this is my opinion, they're just too easy to build around since you just put in all the wizards, all the rogues, all the clerics into one deck and you call it a day. They don't really fit into a 99. I mean, maybe there might be a deck or two that cares about clerics out there. And the red, black, and white, blue legends are not interesting in my opinion. They're hard to build around since you have to balance all the party types, and the payoff is just mediocre in my opinion. Like what, detaining something is giving everything death touch. Although, if you do run a Taziri Beacon of Unity deck, pretty much all the party legends from the set just go into it because it's it's Flavor Town. But let's talk about the ones I do like. With Phylath World Sculptor, slots into landfall decks in Commander, more in the 99 and then in the command zone in my opinion, especially token style landfall. Yasharn Implacable Earth. Now if you're tired of aristocrats, run Yasharn. fits into the 99 better than the command zone, but since it's a generic kind of commander, you can definitely build around anything you want while this is in the command zone. Grakmaw, Skyclave, Ravager, a +1/+1 counter commander. It does really well. Or you could run it in the 99 if you have a +1/+1 counter deck that has a black and green in it. Interesting move having the +1/+1 counters in Golgari for this set. It's not really a theme that we see too often. Usually it's white-green. Now moving on is Akiri, Fearless Voyager. Now this is the one party legend that I actually really do like. Any equipment deck will love this. Very powerful include into Sire Gwen, even though it isn't a knight. And if you have any interest in playing equipment in EDH, buy this now. In my opinion, these will skyrocket once people see the power of drawing cards, especially in Boros colors. Oof. Moving on is Verizal, the Split Current. And it's interesting build around for Kicker. Kicker isn't really a commander supported keyword. So having this commander might, if you have a few Kicker cards lying around, I'll definitely experiment with it. It's very unique in my opinion because the commander tax, the command zone tax, whatever it's called, it doesn't hinder the serpent. Just a little tip for you since you spend the mana on the spell. At least that's how I need to check the ruling on that. Skyclave Relic, moving on to artifacts, is a powerful 3-cost mana rock. But if you have no desire for 3-cost mana rocks and you just want efficiency, don't even consider it. Now the Pathway lands, they're good lands. I'd buy them now if you want them. You know the deal. These are only going to go up until a reprint. But these are harder to reprint due to their no magic back having 2 sides, double-faced card. It'll be harder to reprint. And we've covered the rares. On to the mythic rares. Any mythic land is an auto include. I definitely wouldn't trade these away. These are only going to go up in price. They're very playable in any format since they can come into play untapped for just 3 life. And they prevent you from getting flooded out. They're great they're not great spells. They're kind of boring spells, but being stapled to a land that can come into untap is really powerful. Moving on from the mythic lands, which are kind of boring, but just innately powerful due to their land and spell, is Angel of Destiny. It's a life game payoff that wins games. Highly desirable effect for EDH. This will start going up once boosters are stopped being open. Pick up a copy now. In my opinion, this is one of the best life game payoffs I've seen in a while. Moving on from white is blue with Seagate Stormcaller. It copies cheap spells for cheap. It's very reminiscent of Snapcaster. Although it is better in the late game, Snapcaster is definitely better in the early games since it has flash and whatnot. Spellslinger decks will want this in EDH or standard. Drana, the Last Blood Chief. Finally, a unique mono-black commander that isn't focused around aristocrats. Allows politicking with the opponents, which is very fun and very interesting. And it's also Reanimator, which I love the Reanimator style of play, because you can get big creatures out early. And also goes into any self-mill EDH deck with black in it, in my opinion. Definitely keep an eye out for this one. It's going to be very good. Moving on from black is red. Leyline Tyrant is the red card I want to cover. It's a very interesting big mana red card for EDH. Definitely a huge payoff for having a lot of mana. The mythic red dragon of the set. These pretty much never go down in price if they're any good, because everyone loves dragons. This effect doesn't come around every year, so you want to buy it now. It's a very unique effect, doesn't come around a lot, and it'll increase in price because it's a big red dragon. Now let's talk about the other mythic red card, Morag, Fury of Akum. It's extra combat steps commander. It goes into those decks. It's a Minotaur. And as a word of caution, this effect is relatively common. It's definitely printed as a new card or a reprint pretty much every year, sometimes even more. Now, if you don't have an extra combat steps commander, this is an interesting option, but if you already have one, I would definitely skip on the Morag. But if you like Minotaurs, it's an auto pickup. Moving on from red is green with Ancient Green Warden. It's a lands matter card with also being a landfall matters card. It's EDH playable, but not that interesting for such a high cost. Now, something that is interesting is Ashaya, Soul of the Wild. It's a great ramp mono green commander in my opinion. Turns all your mana dorks into lands and does a few other stuff. It's highly playable in mono green. Highly playable in those kind of EDH decks. I'll just slot it into the 99. Although it is dubious in other colors in my opinion. I would consider it for 2 colors. But once you get to 3 colors, there's just better stuff you can run at the high end. The Planeswalkers are meh, in my opinion, so I'll just skip over them. Let's talk about Omnath. Omnath is, in my opinion, boring. And kind of lame and lazy design. But if you want him to play him in EDH, definitely pick him up. However, he will always be expensive. So now might be the best time to buy him if you just want a copy. Although, another word of caution, I think he will be reprinted in the next 5 years. Because his price is only going to jump up. Now, if you're just trying to get a cool, interesting 4-color commander, there's a few other options. If you want 4 colors, I would definitely wait a while. You can look at the other 4-color commanders to build around. Omnath is just boring in that opinion. Honestly, I would build around a 5-color commander instead. That's my personal opinion. You might really enjoy Omnath, and you can say, you can leave a comment below just saying, you're wrong about this, blah, 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 blah. Omnath is great. It's awesome. I love 4-color Omnath. That's good. That's good for you. I don't enjoy Omnath, but you do. That's nice. Maybe you don't enjoy some of the cards I enjoy. That's perfectly fine. We can have a reasonable discussion down below. Moving on from the multicolored, go back to artifacts with Forsaken Monument. Now, I love Forsaken Monument. It's going to be a staple in colorless EDH decks. And we'll see play in Tron and Eternal formats, maybe in sideboard, maybe in the main board, who knows. But also, keep this in mind if you have a cube, it might be a fun include in your cube to build around an artifact matters and colorless stuff matters. It would definitely be interesting just to think about and kind of theory craft for cube. Although, if you're not running colorless EDH, Tron, or have a cube, this is definitely skippable. Lithoform Engine is next. It's a big mana EDH deck. Copy everything, double it, it does it all. It's just a lazy design in my opinion. I'm not too excited about it. But if you have a battle cruiser deck and that's your meta for your commander group, you should be running this. Every battle cruiser style deck should definitely be running this. Alright, now we've come to the end of the buy list. Now, if you were to simply buy every card I talked about today, it would come out to $175 before shipping on TCG Player. However, I would not recommend paying the $175 right now. Let's cut some of the fat from this list so we can get to the, good cards, the cards that you get the most bang for your buck, the most mileage out of. We'll first cut out all the commons. If you've opened some packs or played a draft, there's a high chance you'll have at least one. If not, you can go through some draft chaff or ask a friend for a copy. We'll also cut out the Mythic lands, Omnath, and Lithoform Engine. I believe Omnath and Engine will be reprinted soon enough due to their high demand. And the Mythic lands aren't that interesting because they're just boring and bland in my opinion. You might have a different opinion. This leaves us with a total of $86. Not too bad for a lot of rares, some mythics, and pathway lands. However, not done yet. Cut out the uncommons, drop the price to about $81. Notable pricey uncommons are Bala Ged Recovery and Ruin Crab. Now we're at 28 cards for $81. Not too bad. But if that's still too much for you, we'll boot out the pathways to drop it to $63. Still too much? Let's cut out some of the junk with Ashaya, Soul of the Wild, Morag, Fury of Akum, Forsaken Monument, Felidar Retreat, Skyclave Relic, Lotus Cobra, and Seagate Storm Collar. I decided to cut these because they're either boring, have niche effects, or underpowered, or they've been reprinted before like Lotus Cobra. This now puts us at $28 for 15 cards, and in my humble opinion, this is the best bang for your buck. There's some fun build rounds in the 15 while also having some very powerful cards. If you're looking to get cards that go up in value, then turn your attention to the Mythic Lands Pathway and Lithiform Engine. But those are meh, they don't have a huge impact on the game or take way too much mana to do anything. And Omnath and Lithiform Engine they lose their lust draft for a while, in my opinion. These 15 cards are amazing. There's some fun build arounds while also having some just innately powerful cards that can fit into decks you already have. Now, is this the end all be all of lists? Maybe your list is different for the top 15 cards that you want to buy in this set. And that's perfectly fine. Leave a comment below actually telling me about what your top 15 cards are. Maybe your top card is some common I didn't even cover today because it slots right into your artist EDH wacky misprint deck. Who knows? But anyways, this has been Thrill of Possibility, and if you've enjoyed, leave a comment below, leave a like, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff, and have a great day.